So firstly, team, and whānau, I'd love to welcome you all to our second LeagueSmart online workshop. And so this is only the second one, and my name is Sean Stewart, and I'm the LeagueSmart manager. So in that role, I look after our injury prevention, or look at injury prevention and concussion within our rugby league community, particularly at our community level, but also taking into consideration all levels within the game and here in New Zealand. So that's a little bit about me. You probably won't need to know too much about me because I'm not going to be the main presenter. We're fortunate enough to have a couple of people, or a few people that are going to sort of lead the discussion around our topic today, which is the Tackle Confidence Program. They are experts behind it, as they've been part of sort of sourcing, resourcing, and developing this program. So it is around the Tackle Confidence Program. So we're looking at sort of under 6s, under 7s, up to under 12s, but not exclusive to that either. But tonight's going to be purely around the Tackle Confidence Program. All right, so welcome again. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I think most people are pretty onto it already. But as you're in this conversation, we do want you to be able to ask as many questions as you can. Whenever you feel the need to ask questions, please do open up in the chat. I'm going to be looking after the chat room, and I'll probably be interrupting some of our presenters with some of the questions that are relevant to what they're talking about. That's the main thing, or one of the main things about tonight, is that we want it to be as if we're sitting in the same room and you're having that conversation with us and really discuss some of the things that you've found or that you're wanting to learn more about. So yeah, that's a really big part, and I'll look after the chat. But if you can just pipe in that way, that'll be perfect. Please make sure that that your microphones are muted, because I know you might hear my kids in the background struggling to trying to fight getting to sleep, but they'll be in the background. So just make sure that you're muted. I'll make sure I mute myself as well, and probably good to turn your videos off as well. This, I think I did say just before, I'm just making sure I'm covering everything. This session is recorded, so just keep in mind about that as well. Ask questions via chat. I think that's all the housekeeping. You should know where your toilets are and your fire exit are. So that's going to cover our health and safety for tonight. So I'll quickly move on because there's a bit of information that will come across for everyone, to some introductions of our presenters. So I think I will invite Sam. Sam, if you introduce yourself, mate, who you are, what you do, and yeah, go from there.
Yeah, evening everyone. Yes, it's Sam Caudron, Head of Game Development and Participation at Auckland Rugby League. I've been over here for about 4 years working at ARL. Previous to that, I was over in Brisbane, grew up in Brisbane. I was working at the NRL over there, so been really cool to come over here and work in the game I love, and the country I love. And my role is largely to do with the mini mods and the kids. We've just rolled out some brand new changes to the way the game's delivered at a junior level. So that's all my role, and part of that was this Tackle Confidence Program. So we found a need to, what it was essentially was we're just dropping kids into the deep end sort of thing from the under 6 level. So this Tackle Confidence Program is a mandatory part of our under 6 league, and it's largely about just giving the kids confidence and teaching them how to do the tackle techniques so everyone's on the same page. So I won't go too much more into it. We'll save it for TJ. I think he's going to start us off. I might hand over to you, TJ, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hey guys, my name's TJ. Like Sam, I'm with the Auckland Rugby League as a coaching and development officer. Been there for about just over 3 years now, I think it is. I largely work in the Kiwi tag space as well. So originally started developing the game of Kiwi tag around the country, and then obviously more in particular Auckland space at the moment as well. I suppose my area of expertise is probably around coaching. I've been lucky enough to coach quite a few grades, and that ranges from under sixes through to seniors, as well as men's and women's as well. So yeah, that's pretty much my background there for you fellas.
Cool, bro. And also we've got as part of sort of our expert panel, we've got Tony Leopold there. Tony, you want to introduce yourself and sort of your role within our game?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tony Leopold, not really known as Tubbs in the rugby league world. I work in the Upper Central Zone region, which is Waikato, Aoraki, Gisborne, Tairāwhiti, Coastline and Bay of Plenty. Main job is coach development. Perfect, bro.
Perfect. So these three gentlemen are probably going to be, are going to be the presenters of tonight, and more so Sam and TJ will cover around the actual specifics of the Tackle Confidence program. But I guess before we do get you started into it, TJ, I would like to sort of have a little discussion with Tony, or just a quick, maybe even a few comments if you've got there, Tony, that around what you've been doing in the Upper Central Zone, how you feel about, what your sort of philosophy is around it. Yeah, because you've been doing a bit on the ground as well, haven't you?
Yeah, even though they're not delivering the program this year, I'm preparing all the clubs in this region for it next year. So when we've run the festival days earlier on in the year, we used a lot of the mascot movements and some of the stuff in relation to tackle technique with the kids at our festival days, and the kids thoroughly enjoyed it. We also use currently we're over in Gisborne doing a whole lot of schools in relation to getting them ready for a possible schools competition in the third term, as well as a Trish Hina Cup, and we're doing exactly the same thing. I think it's a great tool. I think all coaches should be with it, not only just junior coaches, but we know that these coaches that have to deal with youth grade players that still have poor technique and still not too sure about what they're doing and lack a little bit of confidence. And for me personally, it's going back to something that I learned 30 odd years ago in relation to the development of the game, where we had books that taught us how to roll and fall onto a ball, etc., etc. And we kind of drifted away. With the reintroduction of it, it is a better product in relation to preparing kids to play rugby league. I firmly believe in it. The people that I've worked with at schools and at clubs, they understand it when you explain the whole lot to them. So I'm actually looking forward to it being rolled out next year.
Yeah, nice. Well, thanks for that, Tubbs, and we might get some of your feedback and make sure that you do sort of add your advice or guidance, because you have been sort of starting to prepare your zone and areas and schools and clubs started on it for next year, rolling into it next year. So during the session as well, feel free to sort of add value where you think you can. Cool. And
No
also,
problem,
bro, we'd love to see your face too, bro. Hey, don't hide that beautiful face, brother. There we go.
Yeah, no problem at all. I think the more we can convince our public about the program, the less resistance we'll have if we just keep reminding them what it's about. And we know there will be a little bit of resistance to the diehards who think that crash bash and rugby league's the way to play it. But we want to keep people in the sport. We want to make them feel safe, especially in today's environment.
Beautiful, brother. Beautiful. All right, then thanks for that. We might as well roll into. I've been watching a few videos with TJ, and he's a bit of an expert behind the camera, so I can see him smiling there. TJ, the floor is all yours, or the camera is all yours, brother. So TJ's going to start getting into the actual beginnings of the program and sort of whys.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I'm not really an expert, man. I just that's part of my boss telling me what I have to do. So thank you very much for that, Vigo. Sam, do you want to chuck your screen up, man, and I'll just go through it.
Can I grab the access, please?
I suppose while he's bringing that up, guys, my part of the conversation today is around the why. So I'll start off with that, and then Sam will go through a little bit of the content for you. I'm not looking at you in the camera because I left my glasses at work, so I have to put you on the screen, make it a little bit easier for me to see you guys today. There'll be certain things in this part that I will read word for word just because of the importance of it, but there'll be other things that we don't skip through, but we'll touch base on it, and you guys as coaches can go back in there and have a bit of a look yourself. So the why. So originally the Tackle Confidence program, it was designed to help educate players on safe and correct tackle techniques. So the Auckland Rugby League staff spent a fair bit of research. So Sam in particular did a fair bit of research around the defensive side of things for quite some time. And then we obviously saw a need that this is important for us to start working with. Now, the Tackle Confidence program also helps educate new to rugby league coaches to ensure safe practices is being delivered across the whole game. So Sam mentioned earlier that a lot of kids are just chucked in the deep end. One thing that we overlook as well is that a lot of coaches that put their hand up to coach under sixes grade are just volunteers. They're fathers or mothers that put their hand up because no one else is prepared to coach them. So for us, it was about having a tool or something there for them to develop themselves. So give them a bit more knowledge and then help educate the kids on how to tackle better for safety reasons. So we've kind of aligned the program as well when we were looking at it. So in Auckland currently, we're running the non-contact version, which is Kiwi Tag. And again, that's endorsed by the New Zealand Rugby League. So that's the non-contact version of our rugby league game. We saw that originally we were going to do that for the whole year in under sixes, but someone gave a good idea about splitting the year in half. So the first half of it is a 6-week program where they just play Kiwi Tag for their games on a Saturday. But throughout that process, what they do is they develop themselves over a 6-week program to try and educate them on safe techniques on how to tackle. So that's pretty much how it's come about. In terms of the feedback, it's been really, really good so far. And I've had the luxury of going out to some schools to try and deliver this program as well, just for a little bit of feedback, and it's working quite well there for us as well. Now, the Tackle Confidence program helps with a natural progression for tackle development as well. So it's not just, again, chucking everyone in the deep end and just assuming they know how to tackle just because they watch the game on TV. And Sean also mentioned about the under sixes to under 12s. We shouldn't just assume that a player that comes into play rugby league at the age of 12, 13, 14 knows how to tackle. So we should be, as coaches, making sure we educate them and then progressing through with skill levels of the players. So as the players, we see that they're more developed, that's when we can start progressing through the grades. We also, with the Tackle Confidence program, it helps change perception towards the game of rugby league. So Sam, I'm probably going to throw to you on this one, man, just with regards to parent perception. So I know you've got some percentages and you've done a fair bit of work around that. So you just want to give the guys on here a bit of info around that, man?
Yeah. So quite interesting, actually. A study in 2016 around injury research was done by the NRL in Penrith, Canberra, and Melbourne. So over the course of the season, from under sixes all the way to under 18s, they recorded every injury that was registered. And the conclusion that they came up with was that the game has not got more dangerous. So it's quite interesting. But what they did find is the perception of the game has got more dangerous. So if you've noticed over the last month or so, the NRL's done a crackdown on all the head high shots, and there's been a lot of controversy there. That's the reason, just because of that parent perception. People see what they see on TV, and then they relate it to our junior game, when in reality it's nothing like that, really. So changing that perception, and this program is a big part of that, and helping parents have a peace of mind that their kids are going to learn how to tackle properly and safely, goes a long way towards help growing our game. Back to you, Tej.
Sorry, I'm struggling to turn the mute button off, but all good. I'm back. Let's have a chat about the mission now. So if you can just scroll down for me, Sam, I'll go through that. This is an important part for us. Now, to help increase the knowledge of our coaches by providing a simple to follow program. So doing so means we can help improve the delivery of our players to ensure we are providing a fun and safe learning environment. So you'll see that a lot of our sessions are not just around being safe, but also trying to incorporate fun in there as well. I suppose trying to get away from those traditional coaching methods where a lot of us grew up with doing laps around the field for warm up and all those sorts of things. So we've tried to make it as fun and safe as possible, an environment to help with confidence and ability to play our game, to not only bring new players to our sport, but to help keep our current players in the game here for a longer period of time. Okay, so that's the mission. Again, New Zealand Rugby League have fully supported this. Dan Kepper and Sean obviously have identified that it's an important part of our game. So everyone's working together at the moment, which is a really good thing for everyone. The next page, Sam, I don't know if you want to zoom out, man. I'm okay with that. The next part, guys, the next couple pages is more around the coaching process. So I won't touch too much on it. So it's more centered around the more coach-centered rather than the educational side of the tackle tech itself. The DEPI method, if you don't know much about it, I'm doing a fair bit of it now, is as coaches, we tend to talk or explain and demonstrate too much, where a lot of the learnings for kids especially, or all players, a lot of the learnings is in the practice. So whatever time you spend on a skill or a drill activity, whatever it is, make sure out of your percentage or 100% of the time that you're on there, make sure 70% of that is more aimed towards practical. So more kids will learn through the practical side of it. Okay, so that's pretty much what that's talking about. The next page, Sam. This is a real important part as well, guys. So I suppose we've had a little bit of feedback in the Auckland space because we've already started working on it. But what I want you to have a look at is, especially in under sixes, if we've got any under six coaches on here, stop looking for perfection. You're not going to get a perfect tackle technique at that age. So you have to be, although that's what we're aiming for, your job is to educate the kids and give them a bit more confidence to practice that skill and obviously show them the safe ways of doing it. So it's going to be very, very hard to find perfection. So your job is just to continue, again, revisit the subject, make sure that the kids are comfortable and feel safe to do that tackle technique, okay? So it's important that you're doing that. And again, as a coach, again, this is more coaching centered here, but those are the 4 questions that we should be asking. So the four boxes up the top there. So are they having fun? Is the activity safe? Are the players being challenged enough? And again, for under sixes, you'll have to have a plan B if the kids are really onto it. So making sure you've got alternative options to training and develop there. And also, is there maximum player involvement? So those of you that don't know what that means is we're not having 2 lines where all the kids are lined up and not actually being involved in the activity. Maybe looking at ways to break that down a little bit so there's more active involvement from the players rather than standing around doing nothing. Again, players learn more by practicing, not by standing around, all right? So that's the key part there. The bottom 3 boxes just outline if it's ever unsafe, you must stop the activity, okay? So, and that's any kind of unsafe. If there's any injuries or continuous injuries that are happening, make sure you stop it. Then you need to look at altering or changing the activity in total, okay? The second box there, change of activity. So if players start to lose interest or get bored with the activity, that's when you'll tend to find more injuries set in because, again, they're not focused. So it's important to look at changing the activity as well. And also altering the activity. We spoke about it. If the players aren't being challenged enough, you need to make sure we can alter the grids to ensure that we're whether we downgrade the grid to make it a little bit more easier or we make the activity a little bit more harder and challenge the kids depending on their skill development. Okay, so that's pretty much what that looks at. I
might just jump in there, bro.
Yeah, man.
So you've touched on a bit there. One thing that sort of you were mentioning around making sure that we're keeping our, our tamariki, our players engaged and things like that. I just wanted to make note for those that are in the workshop or anyone that might be watching later on, if you feel that you are you don't know where to go with that, I would encourage you to get in touch with. I mean, you'll have my email already, but more so, try and find your district or your zone development officers. I mean, we've got Sam and TJ here. We can definitely, be able to support you with activities that might be appropriate for your players. Because I think that's a very real thing. You said earlier, TJ, that some coaches, or a lot of coaches actually, are coaches that sort of forced into it because there was no other coaches, and then they will sort of default to what they were used to, or how they were coached, and so be able to provide that sort of resource. I know that our districts, particularly Auckland Rugby League, Upper Central Zone, all of our zones will be able to support our coaches and clubs with that. So long story short, if you're looking for some more ideas, please reach out. That would be my key thing. Because you're not alone. There's a lot of support out there, there's a few people that are around, and we just need to know who needs that help. Cool.
Yeah, just on that one as well. We obviously, as coach development officers, sometimes we have other avenues. We know other avenues where you can go to look as well. So definitely reach out. That's what we're here for. At the end of the day, we're all in this for the same reason. We want to develop our sport and make sure our kids have fun. So it's important that we're all reaching out together on that one. Sam, do you want to jump onto the next slide for me, please, man? I'll go off script on this next one, but the next one's more about reflect and providing feedback. So it's important, I suppose, as coaches, and what I want you to consider here as well is when you've delivered a session, your job as a coach isn't finished just after that session. Your job is to review it, whether or not that's immediately after. It's completely up to you. Obviously, it's a selfless job, coaching, so it's important that you're reviewing your session, what went well for you, what didn't go so well, and what could you change for the next session. So if there was something where in the 6-week program that wasn't quite working for you, try and alter that for the next session to make sure things are working for you. So if you find that kids were sitting around, weren't getting maximum player involvement, how can you alter that for the next session to ensure those are working? And the only way you can do that is by reviewing your session. Okay, so sometimes it's hard to do that for your personal thing, but if you need help, again, reach out to us as coaching development officers. We're more than happy to help around the country as well. So yep, on to the next one, Sam.
Yeah, that's the next one, man.
Oh, no, after that, man, that's the review and provide feedback one. So I won't go too much into depth of that. Oh, there's my beautiful kids. Yeah. The next part. So I suppose this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. And I know, speaking to Sean as well, he's got his own personal stories around concussion, and so do I. And we actually had one last week at our primary school tournament. And I'll give you an example before I read through it, and I will read through this one because it is important. But what actually happened was, after spending a bit of time on this tackle confidence program, when the concussion happened, I'm normally pretty decent with how I dealt with the situation. But what I can tell you is, after I'd done this, I was extra confident on how to deal with that concussion protocol. So making sure you're aware of the symptoms and things like that is important. And concussion is a big thing in our game. It happens, and you also need to know what is concussion. And I didn't really know it properly. I know a little bit of it, but it's an important part of our game because we are playing a high collision sport where people are changing angles all the time. So concussion is a high priority there. I'll read through it as well. So concussion plays a big part in our contact sport. For this reason, we must ensure that we educate our players, on that note, our coaches, on what concussion actually is and what are some of the symptoms. in that sentence there, the two things that we're missing is coaches need to be made aware, but also parents. So that's something that can be, as we read through this, you'll need to know that, well, parents need to know some of the symptoms that they need to look out for, and how to, I suppose, how to assess the injury and things like that as well. So it's important that you do that. Whether or not you bring your coaches in for a meeting or something like that, have a team meeting with all the parents, that's up to you guys as coaches. So the three areas there is recognise, stop, and refer. So in recognise, not all signs of concussion are easily identified. So it's vital to recognise signs and symptoms early. Okay, so I won't go through all the other stuff. That'll be it for you guys to have a chat about or have a read about with the stop and refer. What I do want to mention is, although we are trying to educate our players on better, safer tackle techniques, this does not eliminate the chance of concussion. So this booklet will not eliminate the concussions, but what it does is it makes us aware. The booklet also helps with safer techniques to try and reduce the risk of concussion as well. So it's important that we're aware of that. As a coach, it is our duty to ensure we have basic understanding of what concussion is and what some of the signs and symptoms may be to ensure player safety is paramount. In reading that just now, I would say try and get more than a basic understanding if we can, guys, because again, it's a big part of our game. The more in touch with this subject that you are, or more knowledgeable you are about it, the more at ease you can help put your parents through any situation as well, because you got to think about it as a parent sometimes, and if that was your kid lying down there motionless, which is what happened last week, sometimes the hardest part to deal with is the parents rather than the person that's injured. So it's important that we educate them and show them that we do have the knowledge to support ourselves there. This next part is a vital part, and I think this might be the second to last part I'll read out for you. But what is concussion? A concussion is a brain injury caused by a blow to the head or a violent shaking of the head and body. So it's important to know that concussions don't just come from being knocked in the head. Concussions could come about from a simple, strong tackle where the person's head has been whiplashed or something like that. So it's basically when the brain inside the skull knocks about and it causes bruising. So that's something that we need to be aware of. Concussions can happen at any stage. It doesn't have to mean that the person's been knocked out or making a tackle. It could be someone that's literally running the ball up. So it's important to know that. Now, this occurs from a mild blow to the head, either with or without loss of concussion. So it can lead to temporary cognitive symptoms as well. Now, the next part, symptoms may include headache, confusion, lack of coordination, memory loss, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, ringing of ears, sleepiness, and excessive fatigue as well. The one thing that is really good that I wasn't aware of personally is there is no specific cure for concussion. Okay, so rest and restricting activities allow the brain to recover. This means that one should temporarily reduce time spent on sports and video games. So when we're talking kids, the one thing that has come into life more now is the apparent of video games. So it's important that parents are aware, because ask yourself now, what would tend to happen is a parent would get their kid to go home and rest, yes, but they'll be more than likely sitting up in front of the TV and probably playing video games. So that could, and especially in the first, I think it's 24 to 48 hours, it's important that they're not going home doing that. They basically just got to rest, like it's bed rest. That's pretty much what it is. That's the best one in the first 48 hours. So it's important to do that, and also too much socializing as well. Now, New Zealand Rugby League have some good information on it as well. So they do have the website down there, which we've chucked on there. So jump on there if you're unsure of some concussion protocols. It's good to have a read and upskill yourself on that. I suppose, Sean, is it okay if we open up if anyone wants to ask any questions about the concussion stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say that what I didn't mention at the beginning of the housekeeping stuff was that for those that have got questions, I know I mentioned about using the chat bar. If you are new to Zoom, what you'll need to do with your mouse is just wave it around, and then you'll get a little pop up down the bar down the bottom, and there'll be a chat chat icon with a bubble. I've written something in there at the just at the moment, just to invite anyone to ask questions. But yeah, I guess if there's anyone in here that coaches or anything, or volunteers or parents that are in here that have questions around concussion or anything that's just been spoken about, please feel free to unmute yourself and chuck your video on, or pop it in the chat. So what we'll do, bro, I reckon we'll carry on, but as long as everyone knows that there's a chat room, if you wanted to, you can also direct message it straight to myself, so that it's not sort of public to anyone else within the chat, and then we can also ask it that way. So there's plenty of ways, team, for you to ask questions. Cool. So what we will do is we'll keep moving on, and then yeah, people can ask questions around that through the chat.
No worries. Well, the last part that I'll talk to you before I hand over to Sam is around the safe tackle technique, or so the area of what we're trying to target for of where we should be tackling, especially in particular probably one-on-one tackles. So more often than not, as coaches, we try and educate our players on how to tackle like the NRL, so secure the ball, stop the offload, all those sorts of things. So it's important that we change that mindset and think about the safety aspect of tackling. So this one here is more especially I would say one-on-one defensive tackles in particular, and it could be for not just under sixes, but everyone playing the game of rugby league. We identified that the safest area of tackling is between the belly button, player's belly button, and mid-thigh region. You'll see the red and amber boxes there as well. Me and Sam had a bit of a conversation about this today as well. If it was personally up to me, I would probably just have the one green zone and everything else would be red. I'll give you a personal aspect on the situation. I've got a 9-year-old son playing footy at the moment. I won't say where he's playing or who he's playing for, because that's a bit of a dirty subject itself. But in terms of that's my son on there. I always tell him to tackle the belly button area. So that is, for me, I personally feel the safest area to tackle. There's less moving parts in there. It is underneath the ball, etc. So there's no real elbows or ball and things like that in the way, and also there's no knees and things like that moving in the tackle. So I always encourage him first contact with the shoulder around the belly button area, and as he squeezes in, gets his body position in nice and tight, then he can start sliding down to the mid-thigh area. So that's how I educate my son. He's picking up really well on it, which is good. And I always use my kids as examples. If we've got things that we're working on at Auckland Rugby League, I'll take the kids in the backyard and try and teach them some stuff and see how we'll get their feedback on it. And my son does feel, he has given the feedback that he does feel a lot safer tackling there rather than the legs. So that's ideally probably the target area that we're looking at. The amber, again, personally, I would stay away from anything in the amber or the red thing personally, but that's, again, those are the areas of choice that we've decided there as well. As a whole, Auckland Rugby League, New Zealand Rugby League, everyone's on board with that one as well. That's me, I think. Sam, you're up.
And while we get you in there, Sam, we'll throw a question to you, just a quick one. In that 2016 study, that research that was conducted over in Aussie, bro, there's a question around: is there any evidence that headgear does reduce the risk of concussion in junior players? Does it mention anything within there?
Yeah, it's a good question. There doesn't. It doesn't. But yeah, I certainly would suggest it would. And just the way the game's going, it doesn't hurt to wear headgear. So it doesn't say anything about that. It was just more of a broad spectrum over everyone. But yeah, it didn't. That's a good question.
Yeah, and I guess this is only anecdotal evidence or experience of myself, is that I would wear headgear anyway. I have come across things to say that, again, this isn't a scientific basis, but that it doesn't actually reduce the risk of concussion. Wearing a mouth guard, and this is through some of the work that I do through LeagueSmart as well. Wearing a mouth guard is probably reduces the risk of concussion, because it is that shock, as TJ said, of your head, your brain bouncing around in your head. The headgear will probably help with the superficial cuts, grazes, and things like that. Maybe give you a little bit more confidence. But certainly, some of the research that I have seen indicates that wearing a mouth guard does a better job. But there still needs to be more discussion and more research around that.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, in that study, the head for boys was one of the most injured body parts. So it was 35% of total injuries were to do with the head. And that's not necessarily concussions per se, but it's more cuts, bruises, bumps, and stuff like that. But as TJ mentioned before, concussion is such a fickle thing. It doesn't take much for that to actually happen. So just the awareness of that, and anything to do with the head, if you get an injury like that, just be very, very careful and look out for those symptoms.
Absolutely. Always cautious first. Be cautious first, especially with that's certainly the best practice and advice that we pass on. Cool. We'll leave it with you, Sam.
Cool. Right, we'll crack in. So TJ sort of touched on sort of the why. This will be more the what, so probably more the technical side of things. And I'll also go through our session plans as well. So the 6 weeks and the 6-week program in a bit of depth of detail. So we wanted to make the program, I guess, as engaging as we can. So these are our warm-ups. So we call them animal activations. We've used some of our Auckland Rugby League clubs as our mascots. So Northcote Tiger Crawl, obviously just like a bear crawl, Bay Ruffle Viking Lunge, warming up our legs. I won't go into too much detail here, but you can have a read through if you like. Or you can feel free to ask a question if you've got any questions around them. We don't really want, especially for the under sixes, but for mini mods in general, we really want to get away from them warming up like Premier teams or warming up like the NRL does. So we try to make some of these warm-ups, they're still warming up all the body parts, but it's sort of in a fun and engaging way, and we'll put some games in there as well. So it's really applicable for that sort of age group. So the Tiger Call, we've got a couple there. Got a point shove, pirate hop, LSD soaring eagle. Again, warming up the legs. Lulin stag buck, really good one to warm up our shoulders. So where they stand there and they kick out the legs, puts a lot of pressure here and warms up their shoulders, getting ready to tackle. And Papatoe Panther Prowl, warming up a sort of a full body there. So I've just skimmed through them, but yeah, if there's any questions on them on how to do them, or I've actually got some video. I might just jump to that quickly if I can. It'll work. Not sure if the sound's going to work here. The internet's not great. Okay, we might just skip that.
Yeah, well, if you're still setting that up, I might throw it to Tubbs. Tubbs, mate, do you, I mean, when you look at something like that, I mean, what do you see within that I guess might be attractive or engaging for our tamariki, for our kids, and
We use it in our schools programs as well as showing the clubs how to do it, and the teachers love it because all the teachers have done in the past is run around the field.
Yeah.
We said, oh mate, we make them skip, hop, jump, do all this stuff here, and they can see that the kids are having fun while they're doing it, and that's the bonus. The kids are having fun. Yeah. So much so that teachers have noticed that kids that weren't engaged in any physical activity, when they see this happening and they join in, they actually like it.
Yeah.
And the same would be for any rugby league team. It's different and it's engaging, and it is them having fun. It's a great tool. It's a great tool.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I know that did a little coaching workshop yesterday for my local club, and the under-7s team was running with this, and they were sort of looking around. So this is a bit of feedback for you, Sam and TJ. There's no pukekohe. There's no pukekohe pythons movement, so they've been renaming them themselves. And that's, again, that's when the kids take ownership and naming things, and they buy into it a lot more, and like I said, have that fun, and they feel like that responsibility is on them to show others in their teams and their mum and dad. I think that's a great opportunity to get mum and dad in there if they're standing on the sideline, getting the kids and telling them to go get mum and dad and do the Newland stag buck. Try that one, coaches.
Yeah, 100%. I might see if this works now. But this is our game. So obviously when they're warming up, we don't want them in line. So we just have them in one big line and they all sort of just jump forward. And then we progress that into a game. So they're hopping around the square, and they've got a partner, they've got to try and tag the other person. So sort of a fun and engaging warm-up for them. And you can change through all those warm-ups. Yeah. I'll just jump back in.
I think we missed that video, bro. But
is that not working? Is that not working?
Nah. But the videos are you've got videos available, because I've seen a comment in here. It says, "This is awesome. Read the warm up for the kids. Animal activation. Thanks, guys." So also sending them to the Auckland Rugby League page. You guys have got it, got all the resources, this resource book, and also videos of the sessions on your page as well, haven't you?
Yep. So there's a 10-minute video of most of the games and activities. We're in the process over the next month or two to film every single drill or activity or game in the 6-week program. So it's quite easy, and there's video content for coaches to look at. So that'll be on the way soon as well. But yeah, everything here is online, and we've also got some videos as well. If you want to jump on there on our website.
I'd like to add that Auckland Rugby League, you've got a great resource, and we direct all our coaches there that come to our courses. We advise them to go and have a look. It's part of their learning to resource themselves. So it's a great site.
Yeah, thanks, Stubbs. Right, we'll move on to the tackling fundamentals. So this is more the itty-gritty, and again, as TJ sort of touched on, this is for the juniors specifically. So really, we're just teaching legs tackles, one-on-one legs tackles. And again, this is specifically for under 6s, but it's for any sort of new player to the game. A lot of kids, especially the teenage age group of people playing in college, will get dragged into, well, not dragged into, but want to come along and play for their college team, but not necessarily have the experience that their friends do. So even looking at stuff like this, even just going through that with them can really, really help them, because it can be daunting. Once you get up to that older age group, people are running faster, the more physical. So learning some of this stuff to tackle this in a safe way, really, really important. Right, so our first one is our safe landing. So we've sort of broken down into 3 sort of categories. We've got safe landing, we've got tackle technique, and we've also got bracing for contact. So safe landing, first one is sink, tuck, and roll, which is what we're teaching. So when we've got the ball and we're getting tackled, sink, so making ourselves as small as we can, tucking in the ball to our chest, cuddling the ball with the arms, keeping our chin nice and tight, and rolling, falling on the ground. So a lot of injuries as well happen when kids start to put their hands behind them when they're falling down on the ground. So a lot of wrist and even shoulder injuries happen like that. So we're really teaching them to tuck up into the ball, make yourself small, and submit to the tackle, especially at this younger age group. One thing that we're using as an analogy is a turtle going into a shell. So once you're getting tackled, you're going into your shell, going on the ground, and going into the tackle. Our tackle technique, we're approaching with our head up, eyes on the target. A lot of kids will put their head down and they'll be looking straight at the ground. And if someone's changing direction, they're going to cop a knee to the head, or they're going to, if they're not looking, it's very hard for them. So really important to keep our eyes up at the target. And again, as TJ mentioned, that's the belly button to mid thigh. I'd probably go for the younger kids' belly button, but as you're getting older, you'd probably look at the mid thigh more than the belly button, especially in the teenage age groups. Hands up, bracing for the contact, and shortening up our steps, getting ready for the tackle. The impact, aim for the tackle zone. So again, the belly button, keep our head up, our back straight, and we're encouraging same foot, same shoulder. So getting our foot in nice and tight, and using the same foot and same shoulder, and tucking our head in nice and tight to the side. We call it cheek to cheek. So our cheek here, right next to their butt cheek. Wrapping up, so fingers out nice and wide, wrapping up, grabbing onto the torso there. Again, you can see his foot is nice and close there. That's good. It's a good photo there, Tej. But his foot's nice and close. He's using the same foot, same shoulder. He's got his head up there. He's made contact. He's wrapped up and he's squeezing tight. And then when we roll, rolling to the same way where our shoulder is. So if he rolls to the right here, she's going to end up on top of him, and that's going to hurt him. So this way, he's going to end up on top. Especially if you've got a bigger kid and a smaller kid tackling, that can be where some serious injury happens. So rolling the same way, and we want to try and teach them to land on top. Now, it's not necessarily at this age group teaching them to land on top because we want to slow the ball down. That's not it at all. It's more the safety of it, and if we're landing on top, it's going to be safer for that tackle. So the last part, bracing for contact. So this is when we've got the ball, and probably something that gets neglected and overlooked a little bit, but something that kids definitely need confidence with is how to get tackled and what to do. So securing the ball, that's number one, making sure we don't lose that footy. Tucking the ball nice and tight into our body, again, like our safe landing practices. We want to have our eyes up, shorten our steps, leaning forward into the tackle, so bracing for the tackle. And when we're landing, again, making ourselves small, sink, tuck, roll, hinge at the knees and hips, and landing safely on the largest part of our body. So trying not to put our arms out when we fall. And it's hard. It takes quite a bit of practice to be able to not have to put your arm out, because that's the natural reaction to when you're getting tackled. But it's really important. We're trying to land on our torso or the side of our shoulder there. And then moving on to play the ball. I won't go into that. I might just open up the floor, Sean, before I move on. Is there any questions around any of that?
No questions coming through on the chat, but I'll just add to what you've put. So please do ask questions. As a new coach, or even as a coach relearning, that potentially can seem quite overwhelming, but just hold tight, because Sam's going to go into the next little part, and they've done a great job of breaking it down. So yeah, as Sam's going through that, again, I'd encourage everyone to just ask those questions in the chat. Yeah,
sorry, Sam, just before you move on as well, although all of those key points are vital in educating the tackle process, and Sam will talk about it more shortly, but it's more about a progression stage as well. Now, if you try and feed, when you're doing your sessions, all of those key points to the kids, especially as a 6-year-old, they're not going to remember all of that. So start with the progression and try and slowly build up to everything. So as they get better in certain key points, then try and implement another 1 or 2 key points for them to learn. Because if you go into a 6-year-old and trying to tell them eyes up, shorten your steps, lean forward and find space, all they're going to hear about that is find space. So it's important that we educate them in a progression state. Okay, so
that's a really good point, and I think and I know this is going more into a coaching process, but me personally, I work on the rule of 3, so I don't give any more than 3 instructions, and that goes right through to adults as well, because I find that adults can't even follow 3 instructions. So for those coaches that are here and that have got senior teams, I mean that's a great piece of advice they teach. I work on the rule of 3, and even if they're younger, there might even be just one instruction, because once you get to the 3rd one, they've forgotten. They're still thinking about, what did he say about the first thing? or they're looking at, they're laughing at their mate. They've forgotten that I'm talking. So good point, mate.
Yeah, 100%. Just the last thing I'll say, just with our head positioning when we're making the tackle, we really want to keep it as tight as we can into the attacker's body. It's sort of, again, when they're still learning this, it's an unnatural thing to do, but that's actually the safest place for the head to be after you've made contact with the shoulder. So tuck that head in nice and tight, cheek to cheek, and use the tackler's momentum to slow them down. So I did have some video content that I was going to go through and sort of dissect, but obviously it's not working. So unfortunately, you might just have to jump on after this and have a look on the website. But I'll move on anyway. We'll go on to the 6-week training session. So again, as TJ mentioned, those sort of points are more for you guys as coaches. And yeah, under 6 is probably one of the hardest grades to coach because they're usually picking flowers or they're crying or they're running off and all that. So this is sort of, we're trying to make it as fun as we can. It's quite short and concise. We're only going for 45 minutes. And it's all sort of game-based and learning-based as well. So we've sort of broken down each week. So week 1, introduction to tackling. We've broken down each week into sort of 4 sort of components. So we've got our arrival activity, a warm-up game, skill activity. That's where a lot of the learning happens. And we've also got to finish a game or challenge. So this arrival activity stuff is something that we're really pushing, particularly before training starts. So a lot of kids will rock up and they'll be sitting in the car or they'll be with their parents. Try and have something for them to do, even if it's just running around, throwing the footy around. But we've put an arrival activity into each week, something different, just so they can be involved and come join in. But so this arrival activity is human shapes. Essentially what it is you're splitting the group into 2 teams. And the coach calls out a letter or a number, and the teams have to race to try and make that letter with their bodies. So if they call out the letter A, they've got to try and lie down and make the letter A before the other team. If they're 6 years old, I'd keep it quite simple. You can do shapes as well, so circles or squares, or numbers like number 1. You might need to help them a little bit if they're younger, but it's sort of a little fun game that you can play to get them warmed up and running around and having fun. Our animal activations. So again, we're encouraging, we've sort of done 3 each week. So this one's the panther prowl, the bay rosquil Viking lunge, and the Ellerslie eagle, soaring eagle. So really encouraging them to be in one line, have them come up to you and then come back doing those movements, and then use a progression. So have them all in a square and put them in pairs and have them try to tag their partner or their friend using those movements. And yeah, the younger kids, they'll sort of try and run around, hop around, but try and make sure they're moving those things, so hopping around and stuff like that. Our skill activity, so a scarecrow. So with this whole program, it's really a staggered learning approach. So we're starting everyone, we've stripped it right down, we're starting everyone on their knees. So 2 tacklers will be, two pairs will be on their knees. One person will have their hands on the shoulders. And when the coach blows the whistle, they're going to open up their hands, and the other person will make a tackle, trying to get on those key points of getting the head in nice and tight around the belly button, and just keep on practicing that sort of stuff. A progression there is give the tackle kid a football and have them walk forward on their knees into the defender who completes the tackle. So everyone's still on their knees there, and we're spending about 15 minutes on that. Keep on swapping them over, keep on swapping the defender and the attacker over, and try and get them tackling on both sides of the shoulder as well, because kids will naturally favour one shoulder or the other. Then to finish our session there, we've got a game or challenge. So get the group playing in pairs with 1 ball. The player without the ball must chase and tackle their partner. Both players must remain on the knees. So essentially have a big square, partner them up again, and they can only tackle their partner. So the partner will have to try and run away, and they'll have to try and tackle him. If he gets tackled or she, just reverse the roles, so hand the football over to the other person, and then they've got about 3 seconds to get away. The final progression there, split the group in half, have 2 teams playing a rugby league game, but everyone on their knees. So 6 aside if you can. I know numbers will vary. Use 1 football, 6 tackles for the team, and have them sort of walking forward and getting tackling and trying to score tries on the knees there in a sort of smaller space. So that's week 1. Week 2, so we go into our safe landing activities. So again, another arrival activity. I won't touch too much on that, but we've just got a game of tag or touch bull rush. Our animal activations again, we've got 3 new ones now. So the point shed, pirate hop, tiger crawl, and the stag buck. And again, using those in sort of tag game just to get them all warm and get their body ready for contact and to be able to tackle. So here we've got our turtle shell landing. So spend about 10 minutes on this. Everyone has a football in the square. The square must be big enough so each player has a safe space to land. So just health and safety wise, try to make it, so they're not landing on each other. Practice your safe landing techniques. Have the kids in their own space curling into a ball or into a turtle shell. So again, using that analogy. Start from a kneeling position, then progress if they're comfortable and confident into standing. So just have them sort of walking around on their knees and practicing that safe landing. And then as they progress, get them standing up and practicing that as well. And as a progression, walking around the square on the coach's whistle or signal, players all go to ground using the safe landing technique. So again, TJ touched on the maximum player involvement. There's no lines there. They're all sort of involved and they're all sort of learning that turtle shell landing, as we call it. Again, to finish off, and this is probably what you'd spend most of your time on. We've allocated 20 minutes here, but turtle tag. So in pairs, one player will try and get away with a footy, while the other player chases the person. If the player is tagged or touched, ball carrier must perform a safe landing and then get up and play the ball. So we're not tackling just yet, but they're trying to get away. If they do get touched or tagged, they can perform a safe landing because that's the skill they're learning this week. And then they can go from there. The tagger, we're encouraging to go into dummy half so we can sort of play the ball there as well, and they can pick it up. With the new ball carrier trying to evade their partner, the partner will have to wait 3 seconds before chasing. So that's just a little fun game to incorporate our safe landing. And as a progression, split the group in half with 2 teams playing league tag. So this again is targeted under 6s, but if you don't have tags or tag shorts, you can just play touch. Play this in a small grid or square and enforce a rule if they get tagged or touched. Before playing the ball, they've got to perform a safe landing technique for you. So tackle 1, the kid runs up and gets tagged. They perform a safe landing, get up, play the ball. So week 4, we're moving on. So our arrival activity here is numbers up. So pretty simple game. Have the kids jogging around the square when the coach calls out a number. For example, 2, the players got to race to get into groups of 2. Calls out 5, they've got to get into groups of 5, etc., etc. If a player misses out, so if there's any uneven numbers, have them perform a warm-up activity of star jumps or lunges or high knees or something like that. Our animal activations in there again. It's in every week, just to get the body ready. We move on to the bracing for contact side of things. If you've got hit shields, brilliant. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. I know that not every team has hit shields, but if you do, try and use them because they are a good tool. They explain the fundamentals of bracing of contacts again. Protect the ball, brace for contact, land a large part of your body and play the ball. Have kids running around through 2 inwards facing hit shields. This way they become customized to contact. Set up a few hit shield channels so there's no long lines. If you don't have hit shields, you can put in some players or defenders or even parents if you like, and just have them hold their arms out. So just so the kids are getting used to running through and getting used to that contact. Begin with a little bit of soft resistance and slowly progress it too. So they've got to try and actually burst through or use their leg drive to push through. And there's a progression there. So the game or challenge for this one, again, spending the lion's share of the time here, 20 minutes on that. Have 2 to 4 players with hit shields in the square, while the remaining group has a football each. Players with the football must evade the players with the hit shields. Count how many players the hit shields team can tag, rotate new kids in, and see if anyone can beat their score. So example, if a couple players got tagged 10 people, sort of make it like a high score event and try and get some other people in there to try and beat their score, see if anyone can beat the score of 10. And as a progression, we're using the skill they learned from last week, so the safe landing. If the ball carriers are tagged by a hit shield, they must perform an example of safe landing. Make sure everyone gets a turn. Pardon me. Make sure everyone gets a turn of being a tagger and a evader. Week 5, I think it is. I can't see it up there. Week 5, Gang up Tiggy. So again, pretty old school classic game of gang up Tiggy or tag. I won't go through that in too much detail, but it's there. We've got an animal activation again. Again, we're changing. We've got those three movements there. A little game. Tackle technique. So this is where you spend a little bit of time on the stuff that we just talked about, the cheek to cheek. In pairs, both kids on their feet. One player has a football and walks forward, bracing for the tackle. The partner makes a tackle standing on their feet. So they're no longer on their knees now. We've moved to standing on their feet, an actual tackle. Hit home the approach, hit, wrap, push and roll. Same foot, same shoulder, get the head nice and tight, and try and end up on top if we can. Have a couple turns and then swap rolls and swap shoulders as well. Our progression there for that activity is progress to running or a slow jog, and yeah, just enforce that it's a learning environment. We're not trying to run over people or run through them. A game of challenge is a game called Tackle Frenzy. So in pairs, one with the ball, one without. Kids must try and tackle their partner. For this week, we're just encouraging speed walking, especially for this game, because as they're still learning, it can get a little bit hectic if they're all running around trying to tackle each other. So just encourage speed walking, make sure the grid's nice and big, and try and pair up more experienced kids with sort of other experienced kids and people who are still finding their feet and getting confident with other sort of people like that. Once tackled, players reverse roles, play the ball, and the new evader has 3 seconds to get away. So they just swap over there and they keep going for a couple of minutes and then swap them over. You can even swap over the partners as well. The progression for that one is split the group in half, 2 teams playing tackle rugby league, 1 ball, 6 tackles for the attacking team, and we're just doing speed walking for this week. Again, as we're doing a staggered learning approach. I think this is week 5 here. So our arrival activities, sock wars. This is one of my personal favorites. It's essentially a game of a dodgeball, but not everyone has dodgeballs, so we're using sort of old socks. So if you've got a group chat or something like that, just send it through to the parents. Say, hey, bring some old socks. We don't really like using the kids' socks because if it's wet and dewy, the kids' socks are getting all wet and then they've got to put them on and run around. So if you can, just encourage them to bring some socks. But essentially, it's a 10 by 10 meter grid with a halfway line, 2 teams. You just got to try and hit the team on the forward. It's a pretty good game. It's pretty fun. The kids like it, and it sort of warms up the shoulders as well, which is how it ties into sort of the tackle confidence program. I think if you play that, they'll probably want to play that every week. So just be careful with that one. Again, our animal activation, getting our body all ready to move to contact. Here we're focusing on the side tackle. And again, we've got videos for these that go into a little bit more detail, but have the kids perform a side-on tackle here. Make sure our head's in the right spot. Get the kids to tackle the runner, and I'd probably just do it at a jog, but from the side. And if you do have hit shields, onto a bed of hit shields rather than onto the grass. If you don't, you just have to use the grass. But by now they're sort of getting accustomed to the landing and to the falling down and to the sort of contact, so it shouldn't be too bad. The player getting tackled should practice their safe landing technique. So again, sink, tuck, and roll, and go into your turtle shell. And have 5 turns on each shoulder, and then swap rolls. And then our progression there is to take away the hit shield bed. Tackle frenzy. So again, we're going into this game of tackle where they're all in a big square. This time they're allowed to jog or run. I'd probably just encourage jogging, but I know kids are pretty competitive and they'll probably just run around. But again, because it's a learning environment, just try and minimize the sprinting around if you can. But yeah, so they're on their feet now and they're performing tackles. If the kid gets tackled, they get up, play the ball, and then the dummy half has 3 seconds to get away and they've got to try and catch them. A progression from there is split the group in half with 2 teams playing tackle rugby league. So essentially a game, 1 ball, 6 tackles for the attacking team. The players allowed to jog running this week. Try and play in a reduced area. So if you're playing, and this is for the 6-year-olds, if you're playing in a 40 by 20 meter field, which is what they're playing on the weekend, there's lots of space to run around and score tries. Because we're trying to encourage tackling at the moment, I'd probably set up a 20 by 10 meter grid just so they can get more contact and more practice at the tackle rather than the runaway tries and stuff, because it's not necessarily what they're trying to learn in this sort of segment.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Sam, if you don't mind, is I really like what you've said there, and a simple sort of It's sort of been, it's in coaching, most coaching courses or anything you do is using the step model. So with all of this, you've been talking about different progressions and potentially regressions. And this is how it's applicable. So for those coaches that are tuned in or volunteers that are tuned in, there's ways this can apply to, or I feel, going up to your older ages or going to your under sixes as well, simply by using step. So S is space. So adjusting the space, making it smaller. Obviously, Sam was saying that there's things like there'll be a lot more opportunities. There's not as much room to get around. So if you're doing something like tackling, having that space reduced makes it a little harder to run around and makes it more contact. If you make it bigger, so for our older kids, if their ability is higher, and you'll know as a coach, whether they're getting bored with a small space, you open it up and give them a little bit more, and then that offers that challenge. So look at the space you're using. You can adjust the space, and that adjusts the challenge for your kids. I sort of say is task or time. Put a time on it, or change the task. Like Sam said, walking. You can only walk, then that's, or jog or run, or even with kids, you can get them hopping around like Tony was saying at the beginning, get them hopping, just using different modes of movement, because when they're that young, most kids still don't know their left from their right, or they're still tripping over their feet. So there's different things that you can make it engaging and fun by changing the task or putting a time to it. And again, that as you get older, you can introduce, when their ability looks like they've aced that particular role, scaffold the challenge up and get them to a bigger space and running, and obviously keeping your safety. E is different equipment. Again, equipment can be a luxury for some clubs, and some people may not have any. So changing your equipment with 6-year-olds, for example, when I was in schools, sometimes it is using like balloons, even just for, I know this is probably sounds a bit weird, but for eye tracking and getting them used to catching something. A lot of kids don't have that ability right then. If you're looking at your under sixes team and they're struggling with catching a ball, using balloons so that they're actually, their hand-eye coordination, you're tuning that in. So sort of different things. So that's an example of equipment. And the other one is people. So within your game, adjusting the number of people can adjust the difficulty, and that's how you can make this go right through to under 12s and keep it interesting for them and keep it challenged, and also regressing or scaffolding down for that. So I think you touch on a good point there, and that's what this sort of offers.
Yeah, and the progression sort of stuff is quite important, because if you're playing one thing for too long, the kids will lose interest, especially if they're 6 years old. You'd be lucky to have them. If you're not changing things, you're not going to keep them for too long. So really important to be able to progress games and regress games if you need to sort of think on the fly as a coach.
Yeah, sorry, Sam, at the risk of talking too much, but it's important when you're, say you've set up the activity or whatever Sam's going through now, as a coach, you're actually sitting back and watching it as well, and observing the actual activity take place. Because like Sam said, if you're focusing on tackle and your field's too big, then it's about making sure, if you're standing back and observing it, that's not working. So being able to change the grid on the fly is important as well. So sometimes as coaches, we can get too involved in the coaching element rather than just standing back and observing the situation and what's at hand, and then things can get overlooked. So it's important, have the activity, cool, just let the kids do it, stand back and watch, and then you can work on things from there. So it's important that you're doing that, because field size is massive. People don't tend to, like, an example, I did a coaching visit about a week and a half ago, and I was doing this tackle program, and the field size was too big, and I felt like we were going away from the purpose of the session. And because I allowed myself to take a step back and observe it, I was like, you know what? It's the field size, simple. I changed that, boom, I got more effectiveness out of the session. So having the ability to do that as a coach is important as well.
Yeah, cool. Right, so the last week, and so sort of by this week, we're going into a proper game of rugby league. But we'll start with an arrival activity, picking in the middle. I won't go into too much detail about that. Animal activation. So again, we're using an animal activation tag to warm up everything. The last sort of skill learning is a 2-on-1 tackle. So we're encouraging, I guess, to split the groups, and if they're 6 years old, they're probably still going to be making a 1-on-1 tackle. That's the reality of it. But it can't hurt just to sort of introduce them to the 2-on-1 and have them both tackling if they can. But we're splitting the group up into teams of 3, 1 football per group. Set up a few 3x3 meter channels. So again, making it quite small because our objective is the tackle. Have 1 group per channel. The attacker with the ball's got to try and score a try on the designated try line. The 2 defenders must try and work together to stop him or her. Again, if you're watching under 6 game, almost all the tackles will be 1-on-1. So this is just sort of an introduction to sort of a 2-on-1 and how they can work together to be able to stop a defender. Swap roles and sort of let them learn and rotate the players in after each go. As a progression, have the coach, parents, or extra players not in the groups. You can act as a dummy half, so getting the kids to try and run onto the ball and catch it and try and beat the defenders. So there's a little bit of a attacking skill there as well. But again, it's largely focused around the tackle. And again, you're probably going to get mainly 1-on-1 tackles with the other kids sort of watching, but that's fine. And to finish off, we've got a game, so 6 versus 6. So here we've suggested to set up the field size as they would play on the weekend and have a sort of a full size tackle game. So if you've got a squad of at least 12, that'll be perfect. If not, you might just have to modify it. So if you've only got 5, bring that down to about 30 by 10 or something like that. But just think on the fly and modify those according to how many kids you got. And as a progression, have a half time after 10 minutes where the coach brings the kids in to encourage them and provide feedback and mention all the learning objectives. So that's the 6 weeks there, guys. Just jump out of that. Might just stop the screen share. Did we want to sort of open up the floor? Not so much for questions, but probably more just general discussion, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So with those that are into the workshop, is there any sort of questions or discussion points, things you liked, things you want more information on, contact or anything like that? I think that's have a little bit of a think around that, team. We've got sort of 10 minutes to 8, so feel free, please, to unmute yourself and have a korero with us. I did see I got a message saying that there was no Otahu or Reuben Wiki movement. So our South Auckland, there's something going on with our South Auckland. Tubbs, have you got? Have you?
Surely that's got to be Viceroy asking about Otahu. Surely.
It was. You win.
I liked what you said earlier about that as well, Sean. Or someone said it about getting the inclusion from the kids. So that's just what we named it. And again, we had other names and we changed them like half an hour before the document went out. So if you can challenge the kids and get their buy-in. You can name it after a parent if you want to. Do you know what I mean? Just to make things a little bit funny. So just find interesting ways to do it. If you want to do Otahu everything Viceroy, that's up to you, my man. So yeah.
I tried sorting out names for the movements for Cubs around here and trying to line them up. It's a little bit difficult, so we're kind of using the NRL ones because kids will watch the NRL.
Yeah.
As opposed to going and watch senior footy down this end. And I like the fact that when we're dealing with constraints around the field size and that, if it looks a little bit fluffy in relation to that we're not achieving what we want to achieve, sometimes I'll ask the kids so they get the buy-in. I'll say, hey, why, we're supposed to be tackling. What do you think we could do to make sure that we make more tackles? And they'll come up with the idea. So all of a sudden they own it. Okay, we'll make it a little bit smaller. That way they get into the habit of being able to give the coach feedback.
Not just that, but also as they get, in those older sort of certainly by under 10s, under 11s, under 12s, they're making their own decisions on the field and within their own peer groups, even outside of sport, they're making decisions at school and at home and things like that. So definitely they're looking for that responsibility, I guess, and for some input. My girls, I got a 4 and a 3-year-old, and they already think they know what they're talking about. So I can only imagine when they get to 11 and 12. While we're here as well, I know I just want to make a point that there's going to be people who are in this workshop, but also people replaying this as well. Want to just throw out a huge mihi to our volunteers. And I think that's a really key part of these workshops, is that there is support out there for all of our volunteers. Some know where to find it. A lot feel that maybe they're on their own, but there are awesome people like Tubbs in the Upper Central Zone and Jamea, Sam, TJ, and their team. They've got a big crew at Auckland Rugby League. Our zones, particularly look towards our zones if you are wanting more information, because we are ready to support our community, I guess, and you'll find beautiful people like Tubbs, Sam, and TJ around. The other thing there was questions around resources. So Sam's slideshow is actually a PDF document on the Auckland Rugby League website. Maybe I'll send a direct link to everyone where to find those things, and also those videos that you were talking about, Sam.
Yeah. So send a link. But if you jump on the website, I think it's under Learning Resources, and then Tackle Confidence has got its own tab. So it's pretty easy to find. It's got everything on there. It's got the videos and that PDF document as well. Hey, just while I'm talking here, I just had a question come through. I'll just read it out. So it was how do we encourage players to look up and avoid contact with elbows? It's a pretty tough one to teach, because again, lots of the kids are looking down at the ground. So to teach them to look up, I would go behind. If I was the coach, I'd go behind and just put up some numbers or something and say, look, I'm gonna change it this time. I want you to see what I'm doing. So they're actually looking up, and just stand directly behind them, obviously, so they're not looking left or right, but they're still sort of got the target zone in eye shot. But yeah, I'd go behind and put up some numbers and make them call it out after they've made the tackle. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I was just going to say you can hold up different colored cones, but I mean you don't even need equipment. You're doing fingers, so but anything that works. You might have your hand up or down, and they've got to say whether it's up or down. That's great, bro. Perfect. And you'll see even as adults, having coached from juniors right through to adults, you'll notice that adults actually close their eyes when they go into contact as well. So it's not just the sort of juniors. So with this Tackle Confidence program, it's actually teaching really good foundation sort of principles, and they can apply. Some of these things can apply right through to our senior level as well, because it's that foundation of best practice. I think we've spoken about good practice or best practice when we're performing a tackle, Sam. But I mean, with so many variables, there's not really a perfect style, but there is sort of things that we would like to do to reduce injury and harm, but also increase our ability to make the tackle, of making a successful tackle. So yeah, that was a good question.
We have a couple of districts that actually play a smaller junior season. So with the program, we're advising them that they do it pre-season and look at the possibility that for the first couple will come up and get their clubs together, because they only have 5 or 6 clubs. I think there's 6 clubs up at Hauraki. Get them together on a Sunday morning, and we'll come up and go over the program with all the clubs, just with their 6-year-olds and possibly their 7s. That way they're learning before the season starts, and encouraging to play the tag as part of their trainings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just on that one as well, Thompson. I suppose Dan can maybe come in on this one as well. I know Auckland Rugby League, and we spoke about it as well, Dan, in a previous meeting about potentially making it compulsory for all new to rugby league coaches to sit this course as well, because it is a vital part of our game. And obviously it's the educational piece that we need everyone to be aware of, because again, it's not just for under sixes, it's for everyone new to our game. And Sam mentioned something earlier as well about like there's not many 2-on-1 tackles. I can hand on my heart say that even in under 12s there's not many 2v1 tackles. A lot of the tackles that we have is 1-on-1, so educating those kids around that area is vital. So making that potentially compulsory, Tubbs, as well. Hopefully if we all jump on the same page, we can all make it like that, so we all have better educational or educated coaches out there to help the kids.
Totally agree, bro. Totally agree.
Cool. Well, what we might do is we might just finish it up there if there aren't any questions. So what I would like to do is obviously thank you to firstly our volunteers out there, doing a great job. And please do, my encouragement is to reach out to New Zealand Rugby League, your zones, your districts, and get in touch with them and say, hey, I'm really keen to learn a little bit more. And that'll make our job easier, because we're out there trying to look for you. But if you come to us, that'll make things a lot easier. And like I said, you'll come across awesome people like Sam, TJ, and Tubbs within your communities, and myself. I might put myself in there, but it's really appreciated. And I do want to encourage everyone to go towards the Auckland Rugby League site. Also, go to your own site. On the New Zealand Rugby League site, as the LeagueSmart manager, we do have the LeagueSmart online program there, and that's just taking you through really a foundation part of keeping your players, yourself, safe within the game, and also covers some other things as well. But what I'll do also is I'll send out links via the email. This is recorded, so I'll cut it up as well into parts. We've gone an hour and a half now, which is, I thank you for your attention, those that are still here. So I'll cut it up and share it with everyone as well, and I'll also make it public as well, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that want to find, learn a little bit more, particularly around the specifics of a tackle and good practice. Anyone else like to add anything in there, or say goodbye?
Can I just jump in real quickly, Sean? So we've also got an online education module for this program specifically. It's on our website. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more, that'll really help. It's also got all the video content as well. If you're in the Auckland district and you need some assistance in delivering this program, flip me an email and we'll come out and help you deliver it and come see your team and your club. So that's our commitment. It's an important part of, I think, of the game and the direction we're going. So it's really, I think it's good that we're placing a lot of importance around this.
Yeah, and with that, Sam will shout you a coffee as well.
That's good, and a big breakfast.
Oh, you're going to be inundated now, mate, with everyone wanting tackle confidence program.
Yeah, Billy's big breakfast, mate.
Thank you again to Sam, TJ, and Tubbs. Thank you very much. And everyone else who participated in this. Again, finally, I know I've said it before and I sound like a broken record, but please do get in contact with your district, your zone, New Zealand Rugby League. Hassle them like nothing you ever did if you want to find more information on how we can support you as well, because we've got it there. The knowledge is all around our motu, and we're just willing to get that out to everyone.